Welcome back to the AI Chat podcast. I'm your host, Jaden Schaefer. Today on the podcast, we're talking about a really interesting company called Greptile. Love the name. They've just raised $4 million to create an AI-fueled code base expert. So today on the podcast, I'm going to be breaking down what exactly this means, what it's doing, and how I think they're a little bit different than some other AI code players in the space. I think this is a really interesting field that's evolving pretty fast, but in my opinion, and if you ask my CTO of my startup, AI Box, not fast enough. So this was actually founded by a recent Georgia Tech graduate who has essentially been focusing on using AI to help developers understand their code bases rather than just generating code. So this is kind of a place I think that is perhaps missing or not focused on very much in this generative AI space beyond just write this code for me. How do you really understand your code base and how do you help your developers understand their code base? There's a lot that goes into that. So right now the startup has an API that developers can connect to their code bases and they can use it to build custom apps based on a bunch of different AI-driven queries that you do. So Greptile's CEO and co-founder is Daksh Gupta, and he has described the AI tool as, quote, like having a highly experienced coworker who has a deep understanding of your code. I think this is a big deal. Right now with AI Box, we've been onboarding a bunch of new developers over the last couple months. After we did our crowdfunding campaign and we raised a bunch of money, so we had the funds to build out our development team. And so we've been hiring a bunch of developers. And one thing that we have, always consistently noticed takes a ton of time is when you bring on the new developer, getting them up to date with the code base and everything going on and explaining that you essentially have to get another developer to do that. And that costs money because you're paying both developers at the same time for learning. There's kind of this boot up phase. It's well known in the industry, but I think that there's a significant incentive there to essentially get this boot up down to as little as possible and to not have to use two people to boot someone up. So I think a tool like this that understands your code base and can kind of train and onboard the new people, get them up to speed on how everything's run and written and done is a huge benefit and literally saves you a ton of money. Like it's kind of like when you have these AI tools that you can directly say, hey, like I used to pay this and now with this AI tool, it's saving me X amount of money. I think it's very tangible. Like if you say, 3 days of one of my, top devs time is worth this much money. And so if I can save them 3 days where they don't have to be training someone, I think it makes a very tangible monetary impact. So kind of cool. Right now, their API requires 2 parameters. So you're connecting the repositories for indexing, right? So you're letting like this AI model essentially access all of your code. And then you're adding a natural language query on where you can essentially ask it questions and it can kind of help you understand. So Greptile was launched in July, right after the founders thought of the idea at a hackathon. They later joined Y Combinator. I think they were in their winter 2024 batch, or maybe I guess they will be in their winter 2024 batch. And Gupta has acknowledged essentially they have made a bunch of different mistakes. He said, quote, first, we made the canonical mistake of focusing on attracting investors instead of actual customer needs. I think this is kind of interesting. This is kind of their big focus was like, how do we get investors into our project instead of like, what do customers actually need? Right now, the company has grown to 500 paying customers, and they're trying to give software teams essentially the tools they need to build custom AI developer tools, which are tailored to specific systems. Overall, I think this is a really interesting tool. I'm excited to see where they go. I'm impressed they've been able to raise as much as they have. And the idea, I think, is definitely super interesting and very valuable. So I'll keep you up to date on how this rolls out in the future. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to smash the like button, hit subscribe, or review this podcast wherever you listen to your podcast on Apple or Spotify. Really appreciate the reviews, and I hope that you have an amazing rest of your day.